Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. Today we have a review of Montana. This one is from White Goblin Games. They just released this at Essen. I believe it is coming stateside, though, from Big Kid Games sometime in the near future.
Yeah, it is a resource management game that's 2 to 4 players, takes about 45 minutes. It's deceptively simple. When you look at the game, it looks much more complicated than what it really is.
I would say it's a light to medium Euro-style game, but it looks on the table like medium to heavy, but it is not.
It is also a race game. You are racing to put your settlements out before any other player in the game. Each player is going to start with an X number of settlements, depending upon the number of players in the game. We have a 4-player game set up, so we have 8 settlements that we have to place onto this board. Now, let's talk about all the different components. It's pretty simple. Each player has a player board in front of them. At the top of the player board, it walks each of the players through one of the 3 possible actions that they can take on their turn, including a free action, which is trading in cattle. You also have a place to house any of your workers. Workers in this game come in 4 different types, which also have 4 different types of resources that they'll be going to the main board and collecting. You also have a depository here at the bottom that collects all those 4 resources. You have a place to house your cattle, and then you have all your settlements off to the upper left that you're going to be trying to place. You have a main board. This is where all your workers are going to be going. This is a communal board that everybody's going to be placing workers onto. There's a variety of different spots we'll go to in just a moment and talk about. And then you have the main board. Now these are broken apart. It's completely modular. And the number of these tiles that are going to start, again, is going to be based upon the number of players.
Right, and in the middle of that board are basically the settlers. And this is where, when you're adding to the board with your settlements, you have to grow out from there. You don't have to grow from your own necessarily, but you have to be connected to at least one other settlement when you're building.
You also have this, what looks to be a rondelle, but it's actually a spinner, which is hasn't been done in a while in games, right?
It brings back memories of like life and things like that. But yes, there's a spinner in this game.
And you have coins, of course. So let's talk about the setup of the game. At the very start, you're going to set up the modular board. Again, it goes in a very particular pattern depending upon the number of players that you're playing. You're going to seed cattle onto the board depending upon which tiles have a cattle on them. All the places that have lakes are going to get a canteen. It's a race to get the canteens in the game because they allow a player to kind of break the rules and take a second turn in a row.
Right.
And then you're going to get, everybody's going to get one of each of the different types of resources and a cattle, and then the start player is going to get $3, and then each player after them is going to get $1 more than the next player. So the last player is going to start with more money, $6.
Right, and then the workers, your initial workers, are dictated
by spinning.
By the spinner.
Yeah, so on that spinner you have a variety of combinations of different workers, and you're simply going to spin it twice. If it lands on any color combination, you're going to take those and place them on your board. You can hold 8 workers. If they're white, you can choose whatever type of worker you wish.
And they don't even have to be the same color. You can choose both the same color or different colors if you want.
The last thing I want to talk about, the contractors. Each player is going to place one of their contractors in top of the market down here. These contractors are going to be used as one of your worker placement actions. So, to start the game.
So yeah, the first action that you can take on your turn, it's one of 3, and this is the easy one. And I can't help myself. You're going to spin the spinner. This is going to get you more workers. Again, you just spin it. You take the workers that it lands on. The cool thing about this action, though, is you can also enhance this with wheat. So if I spin here, land here, I could spend an additional 1 wheat, 2, 3, so on and so forth, and move that many spaces forward on the spinner, take those workers as well for a total of 4 workers.
Yeah, it's a really good way to kind of mitigate bad spins, I guess.
Right.
So,
and the thing is, we didn't talk about this yet, but the workers themselves they relate to the next stage of the game, which is sort of the work phase where you go to this board. But the workers are very specific to different areas that you can go to.
So as we said at the start of the game, we're going to start with 4 workers. It's kind of dictate where you can go on the board. There's a variety of different spots you can go on the board. One of them is the bank, which is in the bottom left-hand corner. It doesn't require any particular type of workers. It has white spots, meaning you can use any combination of workers that you so wish. And they require different combinations or numbers of workers to go in those spots. You can pick whatever you wish to go into one of those spots, and then you just collect money. The cool thing is, in any of these spots on the worker placement board, those workers will stay out there permanently throughout the game until all the positions in those regions are filled. So this guy will stay out here until each of the other 3 bank spots are filled. Once that happens, they all clear off back into the reserve.
Yeah, which makes that spinning action at the beginning of our description that much more meaningful, because you might not see some workers that you put out here if all the rest of the players don't go to the bank.
Yep. Then you have a variety of places that you can collect different resources. These are color coordinated to the types of workers that you have.
Yeah, and on these spaces, it's a little bit different. You can go with the correct colored worker with one, or with those spaces, you can go with 2 of any color worker, basically treating it as a wild.
Yeah.
When you go to these spaces are sort of like double spaces. You can go to the first space, but you can also additionally go to the second space to get even more of the resource that you're looking for. And we've got copper here, coal or stone, wheat, and pumpkins.
Yeah, so again, in each of these regions, there's 3 worker placement spots. Even though they look like there's 6, it's just the left-hand side that you're going to, and you can expend more workers to get additional stuff.
Right.
Again, these will stay out there permanently when you go to these areas until all of them are filled in that particular region. Then they clear off and are available to other players. The last thing you can do, instead of those 2 actions, again, you're picking one of the actions, is you can actually build a settlement. This is the whole key and core of the game. You're trying to build your settlements onto this board. Each of these different areas on the board require a different type of resource. And when you build, you have to build adjacent to any previously built one. So you can build next to the original settlement or other players' settlements that they've built in the game. When you decide to build, you're allowed to build up to 3 settlements on a turn. You're probably not going to have all the resources in order to do that on a turn,
Right.
but for each build that you don't do after the first one, you gain 1 coin. So if I build once, I gain 2 coins. If I build twice, I gain 1 coin. And if I build 3 settlements, I don't gain any coin. But to build, you have to actually expend those resources from what you have. So when you look at these locations, if I wanted to build right here, I could spend 2 stone and 1 pumpkin. Now, a couple different things can happen here. If you build in an area where there's a cow, you get to collect that cow and put them into your pen. If you are the first person to build adjacent to a canteen, you get to collect that canteen and put it on your cowboy. You can expend this at any time during the game to get an extra action right after the action that you just completed, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
There's also some different areas on here. There's ones with 2 little settlements, and they're very, very rare in the game. But when you build on those areas, they require you to use upgraded components. Now, stone and copper have smalls and larges. You only will ever collect in the game smalls when you go to these areas. To convert them, you have to go to a very specific portion, which I'll talk about, and upgrade those components. So most of these different areas that have settlements require upgraded components. When you build on these areas, it's fantastic because it allows you to not just build 1, but 2. It's a free extra settlement, so you're getting rid of your settlements a little bit quicker. One other thing I want to talk about when you build settlements, there's also a strategy on how you build these. If you're ever to build 4 in a row, and when I say a row, I mean a straight row. They can't curve or do anything. The 4th one that you place, you get to place a additional one on top.
Yeah, even if it's not a double settlement space.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're able to, and like Jeremy said at the beginning, you're trying to get through these things. That doesn't necessarily win the game, but it will trigger the end of the game at what point you score.
The last thing you can do on your turn is actually spin cattle. Now, this is a free action. It's not one of your 3 actions that you can take. At any time, you can just get rid of a cattle, as many cattle as you want. It's not just one. If you have 5 cattle, you can get rid of all of them. You can do one of 3 things when you get rid of the cattle. You can either gain a resource, a small resource of your choice, you can gain $3, or you get to pick any of the 4 workers that you wish of any color and put them onto your board, which kind of speeds up your ability to do other things. The last thing I want to talk about on this worker placement board, we've talked about the bank and the 4 different ways to collect the resources. There's also this market down here that allows you to use one of your contractors. These are color coordinated to the player. If a player chooses to go to the market here, what he does is if you choose that action, you get a free pumpkin, which is fantastic because you're going to be bidding your pumpkins or paying your pumpkins to this market in order to do one of 4 different things. These are rows that you're going to be placing in. If I choose to do this, I can place anywhere that I wish. And then that activates that ability for every player at the table. You don't have to take the action, but if you do take the action, you get a free pumpkin. Then each player is allowed to outbid you if they so wish, or simply pass. And at the end of it, once players are on the board, they have to pay the pumpkin that's at the top, and then they get whatever of the 4 special abilities are there.
Yeah, the bidding mechanic here is really interesting because, like Jeremy said, if he went here and I choose to go into that same row because I really want to take that action, I have to go at least 1 spot higher than him.
Yep.
And then he gets bumped, and he can go to another location,
Yep.
or keep climbing up that row.
Knowing that you have to pay more pumpkins in order to do that. These things allow you to get cattle, upgrade your components, get a lot of components all at once, and even get coin and upgrades. So these are very, very valuable spots, especially if you're wanting to build on specific locations that require those upgrades. So that's basically the game. You're going to race until one player builds all of their settlements onto the board. That does trigger the end of the game, and then you're going to finish out the round. And if multiple players have all 8 of their settlements, you're going to go to tiebreakers, whoever has the most canteens and the most cows combined, and then you look at that and determine the winner. So let's talk about the game in a nutshell. Like, what do you think?
You know what? Like you said at the beginning, it's deceptively simple.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a simplistic game, but when you look at this game on the table, you see all the components, it looks heavier than it is. It's easy to play through. There's some nuances here with the worker placement that are slightly different than what you'd expect with a lot of worker placement games. They've added this sort of like little auction/bidding mechanic here for the real juicy spots, which makes it interesting. Plus, the fact that you put your workers out, I've never at least played a game where you put your workers out and they're kind of stuck there until that particular area is sort of completed or done or filled with other workers. That's unique as well.
Yeah.
The workers in this game, unlike many other worker placement games, you're not like slowly adding workers. You're like grabbing some more workers when you can. It's quite easy to do. You just have to have the space for them on your board.
Yeah.
So I really like the fact that it's personally simpler than what it looked. I think some heavier gamers might look at this and then play it and feel that there wasn't as much meat on it as they might have expected. But I think for sort of a light to medium Euro fan, I think it's a really solid game.
Yeah, I appreciate the game for what it is. I like a lot of the aspects. I love the artwork. I love the fact that it's a great game for family games, gateway gamers. I feel personally like I've kind of graduated beyond this type of game. Plus, it has the fact that I'm not a big gamer that enjoys racing aspects, like players that are racing to the end of it.
Yeah.
I like building tableaus of stuff. I like building my own things. This is just simply collecting resources and racing as quickly as you can to get these settlements built onto the board. So to me, that doesn't hit all the right, check marks for me.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's going to be just sort of the type of gamer you may or may not be. For instance, I would equate that it's got a similar feel in a way to like, Stefan Feld has all his point salad games. Then he had Oracle of Delphi, which very similar end game in this, where you're really just trying to get these things out. And there's a lot of Euro-y things to do on the way there.
Yeah.
But it's still, at the end of the day, just a race to get those things out. And there's no sort of like, that classic point salad that you
I agree. I mean, if you're comparing those two, this can be compared to his other title. This is Rudiger Dorn, who also did Karuba, which is a hugely popular game. This fits in that same niche of the type of gamers that would enjoy this. It's definitely a family-style game. It's something that can be enjoyed by people that are just getting into the hobby. I think, as you said, for enthusiast gamers like myself, it doesn't hit all those right check marks. It doesn't hit all the right buttons for me.
Yeah, I would mostly agree with that. I would say that's probably, even though it's similar to Karuba in terms of things, I think it's definitely a heavier weight than Karuba for sure. I do think this is sort of that next step for people on their route to enthusiast gaming.
Yeah.
If you've played the classic entry points of Ticket to Ride and things like that, I think this might be the next step. But overall, it was a very satisfying game. There's a lot of good Euro-y things going on. It is just a race game in the end, so that is one of the things you have to be on board.
I can't believe too how fast it was. Like,
yeah,
I played this
fast.
multiple times, and it's over before you know. There's turns where people can lay literally 3 of them on the table at one time and just end the game. So that is Montana from White Goblin Games. Think
Big Kids.
Big Kids is also bringing out 2 to 4 player, plays in about 30 to 45 minutes. If you guys have questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do here, Man vs. Meeple. And we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Season 2 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored in part by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.